10 days ago, we uppotted our tomato plants, and today I'll be transplanting 3 San Marzano and 1 Oxheart tomato plant, and I want to bring you along the process. We're going to be locating them on the eastern part of our property, and more specifically on the lower portion of the slope where we've grown other plants here for a while, so the soil is pretty developed. We also have a hog panel that's there to serve as an obstacle for coyote intrusion. This buys the chickens some time, and with extra time and the alarm, we can come and check on our chickens. And furthermore, with the hog panel there, we will use it as a support for our tomato plants. With the warm and sunny days, it has allowed the roots to grow fairly quickly, and we have a good amount of roots to work with. We initially started the tomato seedlings in ProMix, and we want to transition that root ball to the soil that we're growing in, which is predominantly clay. And with a good amount of roots in the clay, we can now plant our tomato plants. And the amount and size of the root ball will allow us to do a couple of things that will be advantageous for the plants. One, it allows us to set the root ball pretty deeply. We're going to be planting it close to a foot below, and at 1 feet below in the soil column, this is where the moisture is very stable, as well as the temperature and also the nutrient level. If we plant it pretty shallow, then the soil column will respond to the weather above more rapidly, and this can introduce stress to plants if you're not around to compensate for that. So in other words, by setting it deep, we don't have to water as frequently. We don't have to be concerned if the day is going to be super hot to make sure to water. With this setup and springtime weather, we're not going to be watering it more than once a month. In the summertime, when it gets super hot, then we may do a deep water once a week. And oftentimes, our watering schedule will be 3 to 4 weeks. So that's one nice thing about setting the plants pretty deep. The second thing is that when you set it deep at around the 6-inch part of the plant that's in the soil from the bottom of the roots, it'll start to send out another set of roots. And so that set of roots will help anchor the plant and also provide another way for the plant to get nutrients and water that it needs. So in this hole, we're going to be amending it with some well-aged steer manure. If you don't have that, use compost. We're also going to be adding in a handful of the Espoma Hollytone. We're working with predominantly clay soil, and clay soil tends to be alkaline. So we want the Hollytone for some acidity. And the other thing that we'll be adding in will be some crab meal, since we have a lot of it on hand, and the crab meal will be beneficial. It can provide some calcium. As you can see, it's pretty dusty, so it's pretty broken down. And then also, if there are any kind of nematodes in the soil, which we're not expecting from this part of the property, we haven't planted tomatoes in the past, it's pretty clean. We don't expect there to be nematodes, but if there are any, the crab meal will attract bacteria that go after the nematodes. So there, I just broke off 1 of 2 tomato plants, and we're going to go with the stronger plant. We're going to backfill the soil, and when I backfill, I'm going to add a little bit of more Espoma Hollytone to the part of the plant where the roots will eventually break out and tap into the soil. So I like to give it a little bit of extra food right there. This year I'm going to be trying something new. I'm going to be planting some pepper plants next to our tomato plants. And the reason is, on this part of the property, with the way the sun moves, we're going to get the setting sun, and with the setting sun, the angle is a little bit lower, and as the year progresses, the tomato plant will have its bottom stem exposed because the leaves will start dying off. And so with these pepper plants, the idea is to capture that sunlight, and then also as the pepper plants grow taller and denser, it will shade the bottom stem of our tomato plants. And so we're going to be planting them a little bit shallower than the tomato plants so that they're not competing too much. I imagine that the roots are going to be, the tomato plant roots are going to be much lower, and then the pepper plants are going to be much shallower. And these are the Japanese variety, Himo. They make these long, slender peppers, and it's not the type that will consume too much nutrients. Although we do have clay and it holds a lot of nutrients. As far as spacing for the tomato plants, we're going to be spacing them about 2 feet apart. And the reason for this is because we're going to grow from each plant. We're going to allow for 2 main stems, and essentially with one plant, we're growing 2 plants worth of tomatoes. Meanwhile, with the pepper plants, we're going to space them a little bit closer, about 1 foot apart, if not 1.5 feet. And then the last plant will be the ox heart, and we're going to put that at the far end, and we may grow that as a single stem, or we may elect it to grow it as a double stem. The last thing to do is to water the plants in really well, and we want to do a high rate of watering so that it compacts any air pockets that are in the soil. And then the next time we'll be watering will be probably in a month, with the way the weather conditions are for this time of year. If you've been following along, we've uppotted our seedlings. Today we transplanted them, and then the next step is to wait for them to fork out. They normally do. That's when the main stem branches out, and we're going to keep 2 stems, and then from there they'll make some lateral growth, and a lot of people know those as suckers, and there will be management of the suckers. It's not very digital, not very black and white. A lot of convention says remove the suckers, but actually that is very conditional to the weather and how your plant is doing. So when we get there, we're going to talk some more about that. I thank you for coming out and joining me in the garden, although today joining us as my kids are out here helping and observing. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.